Angie, is there a password for the Wi-Fi? Is there a password for the Wi-Fi?
Stearns Guest, Stearns West.
Stearns West is for staff. Stearns Guest. If not, I'll go get that. Wi-Fi in this building is not good.
Yeah, this first one.
Could be that.
That BJ, did you make the site visit on that or no? In Sauk Center?
Yeah.
She used to do daycare. She's quitting. And there she started Jimmy's Pizza.
Oh, really?
And she used to be the daycare lady for my grandson. And she's so good at it when my grandson comes to visit. He says, I want to stop and see Jackie. I said, we can't stop and see Jackie. We don't go there no more.
Yeah.
So we swing in with the four-wheelers and
There we go. Progress is being made.
got a disclaimer.
Yep, just click on the bottom.
Yeah. And in a township, they're all on board. Usually they're not when it's converting farmland, but that's just sugar sand.
So cool.
We're ready to go.
You guys all ready to roll at 6? We're live to go? Perfect. All right.
And Sean and
Okay, I'm showing 6 o'clock so we can get started with tonight's meeting. We will all start with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, we have 3 agenda items for tonight. Prior to getting into our first agenda item, we will start with a quick roll call of members. So, District 1, Jason?
Jason Wienerman, District 1.
Thank you. District 2?
Dave Bentrud.
All right, representing District 3, I'm Jason Crone. District 4?
Sean Blackburn.
District 5?
Mike Prell.
And then we have our at-large member.
Rich Blankish.
And one of our other at-large members is not able to be here tonight. And then we have Jeff Bertram, who is our county commissioner representing. He listens to the discussions tonight and brings that information back to the county commissioners when they meet in next
2 weeks.
2 weeks. Thank you. All right. So with that, if anyone is here on public comment, when your agenda item comes up, there will be time for public testimony. You can just come up to the front. We try to limit to about 2 minutes and try to just direct comments towards the Planning Commission versus the applicant itself. So, all right. With that, we'll go to agenda item number 1. And that is to consider a rezoning request submitted by B.J. Ossendorf, Sauk Center, Minnesota, on behalf of Linda Ossendorf Revocable Trust, according to Section 4.1 of Stearns County Land Use and Zoning Ordinance number 439, to rezone approximately 15.5 acres from the agricultural 80 zoning district to the residential R5 zoning district. The property is in part of the southwest quarter of the northwest quarter, lying southeast of State Highway 28 and Yorkshire Road in Section 2 of Sauk Center Township. Real quick, roll call of members who visited this site, and we'll just start with you, Jason.
Yes.
Sean?
Yes.
I was not able to visit this site. Dave?
Yes.
Mike?
Yes.
Rich?
Yes.
All right, and that covers it. All right, are we ready for staff report, Heidi?
Yep. So this is, again, a rezoning request for approximately 15.5 acres to rezone from agriculture 80 to residential 5. The request, if approved, they would split, this portion would get split into 3 new residential lots. This is partly on State Highway 28 and Yorkshire Road in Sauk Center Township. If this is approved and they move on to the plating process, then MnDOT and the township will have review on the access part of that. Property is currently tillable farmland. There's approximately 90 homes, 1 registered feedlot with less than 10 animal units, 2 feedlots with greater than 10 animal units, a manufactured home, multiple commercial businesses within a half mile of the property. City of Sauk Center is less than a half mile away. Otherwise, it's mostly rural residential lots and agricultural land in the area. There's a variety of zoning in the area: residential 1, residential 5, manufactured home park, agriculture 80. There's no overlay districts or areas of concern here. The property is within a couple different areas on the comprehensive plan future land use map, the transition area and concentrated development. The land evaluation site assessment score was 66.15. And Sauk Center Township did recommend approval of the rezoning.
All right, very good. Is our applicant here on this item? Okay, come on up. And then if you don't mind, just making sure, you can actually sit down right there if you want, make yourself comfortable. Just state your name and address for the record.
BJ Ostendorf, 39683 State Highway 28, Sauk Center, Minnesota.
All right, very good. Is there anything you want to add to Heidi's report?
I did talk with the MnDOT thing. I did talk with them already. And we actually widened the two approaches, and I've got dual purpose, I don't know how they called it, dual purpose for the approaches to use them as split approaches.
Okay.
So the one approach, well, yeah, so I already talked to them, and so we widened those approaches to 34 feet wide.
Okay. And that shouldn't be as important for the rezoning as it will be for the plating.
Yep.
That
Yep.
starts to become pretty critical. So good. Looks like you're working ahead on that. Good. Anything else that you had?
No.
Are there any questions from Planning Commission members for the applicant? All right. Pretty straightforward. Hearing none. Is there anyone here from the public on this particular item? All right, not seeing a rush up here. A motion would be in order to close the public hearing.
I'll make a motion to close the public hearing.
Second.
All right, so motion by Mike, second by Sean to close the public hearing. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Public hearing closed. Fairly straightforward rezoning. Falls within the transitional plan. Is there any other discussion by Planning Commission members before we go to findings of fact on this item? Okay, then we will get moving on that. Number one, is the proposal consistent with the zoning ordinance? Why or why not?
Mr. Chair, I do believe it is consistent with the ordinance 4.10.1 of zoning ordinance number 439.
All right, thank you, Jason. Number two, does the proposal conform to the comprehensive plan of the county? List the applicable sections. It is part of the transitional area as outlined in the long-term comprehensive plan. I also believe it fits under living goals, rural residential policies, and it's basically residential uses in the ag areas must embrace the comprehensive plans of future land use factors to minimize conflicts between adjacent land uses and natural resources. If you look long-term, this area is tucked right next to town, not really falling within the, realistically this area is not going to be long-term ag land anyway with the realistic growth of the city, so I think it fits the comprehensive plan. Any other thoughts there? All right, number three, is the proposal compatible with the existing neighborhood? Why or why not?
Mr. Chair, I would say it is compatible with the, I would cite the same reasons you just did, as this is a transitional area, so it's all going to kind of blend in there.
All right, thank you, Sean. Number four, how has the applicant demonstrated that the standards and criteria stated in the ordinance will be satisfied? You know, one comment I'd make, just the fact that you're looking ahead and looking forward to the plating process means there's a thought out plan. It's in an area that makes sense. Obviously there are requirements that fall within the zoning as you plat it out, and I think you looking into it demonstrates that you're being planful about it. Any other thoughts on that item? All right, so then number 5 would just be if there's any other issues pertinent to this matter.
I guess that the township approved it.
Township approval?
And Mr. Chair, the intention is to divide this into 3 lots. So that would be 3 potential new homes. So there'd be some new growth, but not anything significant in the area.
Yeah, very good. Agreed, Jason. Thank you. All right, if there's no other comments or questions, a motion would be in order.
Mr. Chair, I move that we recommend the county board approve the rezoning request.
I'll second it.
All right, very good. So motion made by Jason to recommend approval, seconded by Mike. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed? All right, so the recommendation for approval will go to the county commissioners in 2 weeks at their meeting. So,
Okay.
Very good.
Right.
Thank you for going through the process.
Thank you, guys.
All right, that takes us to agenda item number 2, and that's to consider a plat entitled Majestic River Estates, Plat 2, consisting of 2 outlots submitted by 5 Point Holdings, LLC of Sartell, Minnesota, according to Stearns County Subdivision Ordinance number 230 and Land Use and Zoning Ordinance 439. The property is Outlot A of Majestic River Estates in Section 17 of Brockway Township. The property lies northeast of Stearns County Highway 1 and southwest of the Mississippi River. All right, real quick roll call of members that visited the site. We'll start with you again, Jason.
Yes, again.
This time we'll go to you, Dave, since I went out of order last time.
Yes, I did.
All right, I was also able to visit this one. Sean?
Yes.
Mike?
Yes.
And Rich?
Yes.
All right, very good. Heidi, you ready to roll? Or Jennifer, you got this one. All right, cool.
Okay, I'm going to take this one since this is my plat project. So, yep, as you mentioned, they're platting this outlot. So this plat was recorded not too long ago in the past few months, and it was a 4-lot residential plat and an outlot. Now they're coming back, they'd like to split the outlot. So that's what we're reviewing tonight. No new building sites will be created, no new residential building sites. Outlot A, which will be the bigger one to the northwest, that will still be a commonly owned lot. When the lots start getting sold, that was always the plan for Outlot A, and the new Outlot B is going to be sold to the individual who ends up buying Lot 1. So that is the plan for the outlots. We do see setbacks are shown. There isn't room on Outlot A to build and meet setbacks other than potentially a small structure, 150 square feet or less. Outlot B does have some room up on top of the bluff outside the road setback where they could potentially build a small shed or something. So setbacks are shown. Wetland delineation was completed. There is a 50-foot wetland setback required if anything is built. Access, so this is on County Road 1. County Highway Department has reviewed it. Access won't be allowed directly from County Road 1 to the property, but they will have an easement to come from Lot 1 over to the outlots. And let's see. So there is a mortgage on file with American Heritage National Bank, so we'll need a consent to plat for that mortgage when the final plat comes in. Soil and water, when we reviewed it at Platting Committee, Soil and Water Conservation District comments was about future wetland fill. The plan for Outlot A, we do have a plan that shows kind of how there's a trail that exists more or less down there already, and they'll clear a small area for parking. And so Soil and Water was a little concerned about future owners coming in wanting to do wetland fill for that trail. So we did take care of that in the subdivision agreement, tried to make it clear. As I mentioned, wetlands are delineated, but then also the wetland is also floodway. So there's some things going on there where it's going to be a very passive use for that Outlot A due to it being wetland and floodplain. Park dedication fee, so this isn't required, park dedication fee isn't required for this plat because there's no new residential building sites being created, so the park dedication ordinance doesn't apply. If you remember the first plat, that was a big point of discussion, and the board decided with the first plat to defer collecting any park dedication funds or land until the second phase is done. This isn't considered the second phase. The second phase will be when that unplatted land gets developed into more lots. Brockway Township reviewed and approved the plat in March. Platting committee reviewed it earlier this month. And platting committee did recommend approval with a list of conditions. I can go through those now quickly. So we would have a subdivision agreement, which would have a number of items in it. This is going to actually replace the subdivision agreement for the first plat.
Okay.
So this new agreement will apply to phase 1 and this new phase 2. Okay, so it would require construction site best management practices during construction on the lot, protection of the 2 septic sites that are shown on lots 1 through 4. It would require the home on lots 1 through 4 to be constructed in the R1 zoning district. It'll state that there was a wetland delineation completed. Those are valid for 5 years from the date of the decision, which was December 14th of 2021. Outlot B is not allowed a residential dwelling due to the limited buildable area and the buildable area being within the R5 zoning district, so a building entitlement is not available. Outlot A may be used as a controlled access lot in accordance with section 10.2.12C of the zoning ordinance. This lot may be solely used for lot owners, by lot owners within Majestic River Estates and the future plat of parcel 04.01635.0010. Outlot A shall only be used for low impact activities such as walking trails, shore fishing, and picnic areas. 1 dock or / fishing pier shall be allowed, but no mooring is allowed. 1 structure may be allowed not to exceed 150 square feet, limited to a picnic-type shelter consisting of 4 posts in the ground with a roof. No footings, fill, foundation, or etc. is allowed due to the presence of wetland. And the structure shall comply with the floodway regulations. Accessory structures are permitted in the floodway. A conditional use permit is required. A trail within Outlot A is permitted. Part of the trail shown in Exhibit A is in the delineated wetland, so improvements to the trail which drain or fill the wetland aren't allowed unless they're allowed via a de minimis exemption or approved by the Technical Evaluation Panel and the Wetland Rules Committee as part of a wetland mitigation plan. And lastly, relating to Outlot A, the site plan is attached and is Exhibit A, so we'll include that with our recorded subdivision agreement. And then Outlot A is going to be deeded by interest to lots 2, 3, and 4 of Majestic River Estates. And then eventually, if there's another phase, those lots will also get an interest in Outlot A. The existing shed on Lot 2, so this is the plat that was already approved. There's a large shed there. That shed doesn't meet the lot size limitation or the building size limitations. So it will need to be removed before we issue a permit for building a home on Lot 2 or within 2 months of the sale of Lot 2, whichever occurs first. Vegetation alterations and establishment of a view corridor on the lots shall meet the requirements of the zoning ordinance. Access to the Mississippi River shall meet the zoning ordinance requirements. That really pertains to stairways, lifts, and landings because there's a bluff going down to the river. When the lots are developed, property owners shall route water from their new impervious surfaces away from the river to avoid causing soil erosion and protect the water quality. This may be accomplished by installing a basin to collect runoff from the impervious surfaces by directing downspouts and grading the site to route water away from the river and gully, or by other methods that accomplish the same results. Options may be referenced in the Minnesota Stormwater Manual. And then the soils on lots 1 through 4 have very high sensitivity to groundwater pollution, which means the surface contaminants can reach 50 feet below the land surface in hours to months. So we want to avoid infiltrating stormwater runoff in those areas. Okay, and then the highway certificate will be recorded with the plat, with those comments from County Highway. Will require an egress utility easement for that access over to outlots A and B. They'll need the consent to plat from the bank. A declaration of covenants, restrictions, and easements shall be recorded with the plat to address that use of outlot A. And then additional detail is needed on the site plan for outlot A, including the trail width and parking area. We actually did receive that already. Okay, so that's in a nutshell, the staff report. And I know we have comments we received from Commissioner Persky, so I don't know if you want to discuss those now or when you get to your discussion.
Yeah, well, you know what, why don't we have the applicant come up? Is there an applicant here on this one? All right, and similar, if you can just state your name and address for the record.
Good evening, Board. Steve Leggett, 42076 County Road 1, Rice, Minnesota.
All right, very good, thanks. Before we get to that, is there anything you want to add to Jennifer's report?
No, again, like Jen stated, this is in essence kind of doubling up on the platting process. So it kind of got double eyes on things, and obviously we've been working with staff both on the subdivision agreement from the initial plat, and then again further review with this modification to the outlot in essence. And then also in turn with that, we've been working with staff on our covenants and restrictions, which all follow suit, and with all the recommendations of staff and the platting committee review. So,
perfect. All right, good. Kind of related to Commissioner Persky's comments, I had a question on the mooring, or the lack of mooring on the dock, and that seemed to be something that was a discussion item. Was that something that you as the applicant had proposed, not having any mooring, or is that something from the Platting Commission?
Well, yeah, the original ordinance modification, was obviously trying to abstain from multiple boats being at a locality or creating a kind of a marina in essence. I did review Joe's comments earlier today, and I did kind of have a follow back on that. Is our vision on that, and it's always been the talking point, was that the dock was for fishing purposes and or not for docking motorized vehicles at that locality. But we did have the vision, and we did discuss that we would expect that boats could come up to that for temporary, for picking somebody up, again, per se, an elderly or handicapped was down there, that the family could get that person easily and safely onto a watercraft.
Yeah.
So.
Well, and that was my comment too. I mean, I get the whole thing about having a marina. That obviously is something that you don't want to have happen. But the reasonable use, I hope there's no language in it that doesn't present or that prevents reasonable use of that dock for, even tying up to pick someone up, or you're going to go have a picnic or something on that lot, and you're out on the river all day, being able to tie up for a half hour or something. That's a little bit different than mooring something there more long term. But anyway, I'm sure that's been discussed. I just wanted to make sure there's some language that wasn't being unintentionally too restrictive. But maybe neither here nor there.
Mr. Chair, if I could just comment on that. That was one of Commissioner Persky's points that he was recommending. So, and when you get to that, we can discuss that further.
Well, and I brought it up now, so
Yeah.
if that's a good time to transition into it.
Sure. Well, and so some of Commissioner Persky's comments were in relation, so he read through the declaration, which I'm sure you guys did. On page 1, it talks about the common area. He suggested taking out the words common docking and replace it with canoe and kayak. Motorized, and then adding motorized watercraft prohibited. And then parking would be limited to authorized maintenance and permitted handicap vehicles only. Let's see. So that was a suggested addition. And then also a comment to place a sign at the end of the dock that should read private fishing pier only, no docking allowed. And that was to Steve's point where he is requesting to be able to temporarily dock there for purposes of unloading and loading people and that kind of thing. And then Commissioner Persky wanted a sign at the start of the trail that says no motorized vehicles allowed. So those were his comments.
Yeah. I don't know how others feel on that. I guess I just appreciate Commissioner Persky's comments. I just fundamentally disagree with them in the fact it's private property, and it seems kind of unreasonable to restrict a motorized use when any other private property motors are allowed. Just I guess I don't understand where his comments were coming from, what logic that was based on. Maybe he has a good reason. It just didn't make sense to me. Anyone else have any thoughts on that comment, or let it go for now?
Well, I just looking for some clarity. Going through the planning committee meeting or the minutes, and I just need some clarification here because I did walk on Monday. You're up on that bluff area, and it looks like there's been some grubbing out of brush and what have you. But because of the concern about motorized traffic, I'm assuming that's a walking trail up there. It's kind of like right on the bluff, as the highway seemed to be fairly close.
The trail easement adjacent to County Road 1? Is that you're referring to?
Yeah, that one, that's right up there.
Yeah, so we do have a trail easement that spans the entirety, and it'll eventually connect up to the future phases. But yeah, so that's a trail easement that will allow people from the lots, both the waterfront lots and the non-waterfront lots, to be able to get down and access Outlot A. So that is a pathway. And that upper pathway will be in I visited with Jen and Heidi at the site as well. That one, again, it's in its infancy stages, but that portion up there will be allowed to have like a crushed granite or basin to it for establishing the pathway. And like Jen said, we do have all intentions to have signs of non-motorized use, private walking trail, things of that nature, to make best use of that trail. And then that eventually does, if you visit it or you walk down, it does drop down the old roadway there to Outlot A.
Yeah, I just wasn't clear when I read this, and then there was discussion about motorized whatever. Yeah, so
yeah,
and is that a totally different location, that trail, that motorized equipment might be?
Yeah, so I mean that's again that's the access point to Outlot A, and the only motorized equipment that would be allowed again would be for handicap accessibility and or for maintenance of Outlot A and or the trail system. So
okay,
yes.
Well, thanks.
So.
All right. Any other questions for the applicant or staff?
Mr. Chair, a couple of questions for the staff when they're ready. Okay, so we identify Outlot B as the original sale will be Outlot B is sold with the adjacent parcel. Is there anything to prevent Outlot B from being sold independently in the future?
Yeah, great question, Mr. Chair, Planning Commission Wiederman. There isn't. We don't have anything in there right now that says it has to go with Lot 1. If it were to be sold to somebody else, we've taken care of the access issue because we'll have an easement, so they will have access to it if somebody else were to buy it.
So then, looking down the road, doing the really bad thing about crafting hypotheticals. So if somebody buys Outlot B separately, could the agreement be modified to allow Outlot B to be buildable?
Great question. Do you mean a residence?
Yeah, so with the agreement.
Yep.
Could that be modified at a later time to allow Outlot B to be buildable?
Theoretically, yes. It would take quite a bit of work. It would require a rezoning to become R1. And then it would require all landowners within the plat, phase 1 and phase 2, to agree to amend it. And If that happened, they'd have to identify septic locations and identify that there's enough space there to build. So there would be a number of things that go through. Theoretically, it might be possible. Can't say for sure.
Okay.
Yeah.
Sounds like your hypothetical in theory could happen, and then the question is real. Well, being that it would have to get approval from everyone else in the plat or in the development, you know, at least have buy-in from them, approval from them, which would, I guess, get around your land use conflict at that point. Good question, Jason.
Could I, part of, I guess the question on that, yeah, is it feasible? And then, but I think it would, if you're asking for if it would be a residential potential build within there, I think it's already been denied that I don't think we can have a County Road 1 access because we have a trail easement cutting across there. I think it's impossible. I mean, in my eyes, it would be impossible to modify that because it would blow up the entire developments.
And it'd be a walk-in residence.
Yeah, it would be a walk-in.
All right,
but,
good.
Yeah.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments anymore? All right. Hearing none of those right now, is anyone here from the public on this item? All right. Not seeing a mad dash up. Motion.
Will we close the public hearing?
Thanks, Sean.
Second.
All right. Motion by Sean, second by Jason to close the public hearing. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed? All right. Public hearing closed. Any additional discussion on this item before going to findings of fact?
The only comment I have, I'm on board with Persky's comments on it with the non-motorized.
What are your thoughts on that one? Just because I don't get it as much, so not that I'm right on this thing, but what's your thoughts?
Keep the door closed, that way that in the future there's not any conflict, that they know going forward that's non-motorized use, and it seems like he's okay with it now.
Okay. That it prevents future issues with all the residents.
Yep.
And having boats coming and going, and your boat's too loud, got it. Okay. All right, if you're good with it, then I'm good as well. It was just on the motorized mooring thing, and that's to Mike's point. You're looking, and I want to make sure I heard you right. You're looking down the road 5 or 10 years, houses are in there, you've got multiple owners using this, and now you've got a couple high school kids that are pulling up the boat and got the music bumping, and it bothers other people that are using this thing, and now it starts to create potential issues within the owners of this lot.
Canoe and kayak, to me that's a good use, but then if you don't have the non-motorized, pretty soon you got 4 or 5 jet skis, and they're not mooring, but they're there, you know.
And they could be there. I mean, they can rip up and down the river all day long. It's just the concentration point if you're allowing it at that dock for multiple families, in essence, to be using. That's the concern. So I get that one. From an applicant perspective, that'd be a condition we would have to put in addition if that was something that was to go forward. Am I understanding that correctly?
Yeah, Mr. Chair, I was just reading through Commissioner Persky's comments and trying to make sure I've got this straight. So in section 1.3, where it talks, and this is in the declaration now, it talks about controlled access. It says a lot intended to be used for common docking or access to public waters. So Commissioner Persky suggested it says a lot intended for canoe and kayak access to public waters. So take out common docking and insert canoe and kayak, and then also add motorized watercraft is prohibited. So just to be clear, non-motorized watercraft launching is allowed there, so they could carry down their canoe or kayak or paddle. You had added paddleboard. I don't know if the commission's okay with adding paddleboard. You could launch that, and then the other question is, what can pull up to the dock? And so is that where we're saying non-motorized can pull up to the dock?
And that's a question. Can we even regulate that? I don't know if that's on a state waterway. I don't think we can even put that in there.
I don't know. I think down the road a ways, are we gonna see more battery-powered motors? I'm thinking like trolling motors we have nowadays. That's pretty quiet.
No, they are.
I mean, how deep are we gonna go here on the motorized?
I would agree. I'm with you there. I get the intent now, and that helps, Mike, that you explain that. I can see that being a potential issue. It makes sense to me. I just don't know that we can actually say anything about a dock that's on a public waterway anyway.
Mr. Chair, Angie Berg, Jennifer, I were just chatting about that. So no moorings allowed. And so no mooring means no mooring of motorized boats, right? So that, I think you stick with that.
Yep.
We aren't going to be able to start regulating who pulls up to whose dock.
Right on. Okay.
So,
Okay.
And even if in the case of a handicap, we're not going to say, oh, well, you can have accessibility here, right?
Well, no, I think we're saying they can. You can pull up to a dock. You just can't tie off to a dock and leave your boat moored.
Okay.
Yep.
All right.
right, so if you have one of these lots and in the future and someone wants to come pick you up to go for a pontoon ride on the Mississippi River, they can pull up to the dock and get you and then leave again, but they cannot tie up.
Yep.
Right. And they can't bring you back there. They have to drop you down somewhere else.
Back too.
Hope they can swim.
Have a buoy.
Okay.
Mr. Chair, are we okay with controlled access lot, a lot intended to be used for canoe, kayak, and paddleboard access to public waters? Okay.
Yep. Yeah. Fine with that. Yep.
Okay.
So wait, is that a modification of 1.3 we're looking at?
Yes.
All right.
Mr. Chairman,
Sure, Bertram?
just an observation. I think an HOA and with the type of homes that are planned on being built here, HOAs and a lot of times are worse than government is, and there's a lot more stuff that would be cause issues at the Mississippi Park right beside it than it will on this private property. The HOA will not allow loud music and kids pulling up, and that's going to get nipped pretty quick. HOAs are more restrictive than government, in my opinion.
Yeah, that's a good, self-regulated, yeah. Okay.
So I'm not in favor of the change. I like the way it currently is.
You're going to leave the change as it is? All right.
I just think that we're restricting things to what we see today without being able to anticipate what might come in the future. So as we talked about paddle boards, I mean, so what if like something else comes down Polaris or something 4 years down the road?
It was something we have to decide.
Yep.
The HOA would have so I like the flexibility in here, but okay.
Well, all right, so it sounds like we have a couple different opinions on this topic. As you may guess, I tend to agree with the other Jason on this one, on the flexibility side. So that's two, but I mean, we can figure it's a matter of modifying the condition in which one we would propose. So if you guys feel strongly, I guess we can take a look at this. Dave, Rich, do you guys have feelings that are strong one way or another on it?
No, having been on the plat committee, I thought it was a reasonable request. It'd be a nice amenity for the residents that will own it, respectful of the lake shore and the natural trails. I had no problem with it.
Are you, so you're okay with it as it's written?
Yes.
Versus modifying it to list canoe and kayak?
It is something that can be redressed if it becomes an issue, correct?
I don't know how the modification, if it's platted in, if it's a condition of a plat, you'd have to redo the whole plat or make that modification. It'd have to go through this process again, right?
Mr. Chair, yeah, it would have to go through another public process, and if there's no violations occurring, you're not able to just bring something back and just propose to amend it. I was going to mention, I can see where the wording might be misleading, where it currently says, a controlled access is a lot intended to be used for common docking or access to public waters. And the concern being the docking. So maybe instead of trying to hone in on what can be launched there, seems everybody's in agreement with saying non-motorized watercraft is prohibited. So maybe we say it's a lot intended for non-motorized access to public waters, non-motorized watercraft access. And take out the common docking, because if that is the concern of the docking.
We don't even have to mention docking.
Well, actually,
Docking is prohibited.
yeah. Docking's prohibited.
Mooring is, and
Mooring. But then what are we considering access?
Sure.
Because now's the time to clarify it.
Yeah, I mean, to the point, is the purpose to have an access there where people are landing and putting their kayaks and stuff in the water? That's how I would determine accessing.
That's access, but I mean, if you don't say non-motorized, pretty soon you're gonna have people backing into the jet ski and on a boat.
Is there even gonna be a landing there? It's just a dock, right?
right.
Yeah, go ahead. Yes, please do. Yeah.
All right. Yeah. So again, I mean, obviously, I've seen kids on bicycles pulling kayaks and stuff of that nature. But yeah, again, non-motorized in the essence, the only motorized would be maintenance equipment and or someone that's being transported down there because of a handicap, inability to walk down there. So again, there would be no ability for anybody to quote back a boat into the water, and there's going to be no landing there. So, and that's where our vision was, that if a kid wanted to bring his canoe down on the trailer, he could slide it off the shore into the water, and the dock will just be up to the grass. There's not going to be any type of a cut in the bank or anything modified there where the dock's going to be. And again, our talking point was always that, yeah, I mean, that's part of the ability. I mean, I've gone through this before with my parents. I mean, where we've had to go to the neighbors to get them onto the boat. So it's just a thing. I have lived in a vision that if we could get an elderly or a handicapped person down there, that literally the pontoon could pull up and you could get the person safely onto a watercraft.
Yeah.
So that's truly the vision. Yeah, HOA, I think Jeff hit upon that. Obviously, that's going to be self-policed. We do not want chaos down there, but to over restrict it where something like a handicapped person not being able to get on a watercraft seems a little over restrictive to me.
No.
That's my 2 cents.
I haven't heard the phrase for loading and unloading. How about something like that? How would something like that apply?
Well, it's a good point, but then if we just go back to the way it's written, and it's access, you're accessing it, there's not going to be a launch there. And so if there's not a launch, does it matter?
Well, you're loading and unloading.
You're loading and unloading.
Grandma.
Yep.
Yeah. And access, I guess, in my thought process too, is access for fishing. You know, it was one of our goals as well, that kids could stand along the shore and access the water for catching fish, maybe jumping in the water, go swimming or whatever. So access, I think we're focusing on docking or putting a craft in the water, but access to me means fishing, swimming, utilizing that shore. It's, I'm nearly maybe a little bit less now, 1/8 mile of water frontage that people can utilize. So.
Mr. Chair, I talked to Commissioner Persky a little bit about that too. I think it comes down to, we're getting stuck in between what is allowed and what isn't allowed. Why don't you just tell us what you don't want allowed? I think that's easier.
Yeah. Agreed. So
Where I get stuck is when the wording access.
You got to get closer to the mic. Deb's going to get after you.
Oh, my wording, I get stuck on with access. And what I worry about is what somebody says, well, today I'm saying that access means I'm going to walk onto the edge of the river and cast a rod in there. But to another person, you say access, that means back in the something down there and launching a boat.
Okay, so I hear what you're saying, Mike. You would not support launching of watercraft, of motorized watercraft. Okay, that's one thing you don't want to see.
So we could just
Okay.
say launching of watercraft is prohibited,
Motorized,
motorized.
because a kayak could be.
Right on, thank you.
Okay.
We all agree
And
on
then
that
that
one.
gets to Jason Wienerman's point about 5 years ago, paddle boards weren't a thing. We don't know what's going to happen in 5 years from now. So let's just say
Yeah.
what's not, what you don't want to see. You don't want to see motorized.
What if we said gas powered? I mean, we're gonna have a problem if the person puts a fishing kayak down there that has an electric trolling motor on it? I'm just, sorry, just,
No, that's what I was getting at before. You know, and as motorized or battery-powered motors improve,
another way?
we're focused on noise,
Another,
but
you
now,
could,
I mean, the reality is.
another way to get at what we're all getting at would be launching of watercraft over 18 feet is prohibited. It takes away your big motorboats.
Mr. Chairman,
Yeah.
just because I'm trying to keep up with Commissioner Persky when he would ask 10 questions when
Yeah,
he's here.
thank you, I appreciate that.
The only
That's two
concern,
now.
the only concern that he'd be 10, 15 into it by now, but that's okay. What I'm not understanding is, or what I'm concerned about is, having two parents that, in a pontoon and having to pull up at multiple, public docking areas because they were more easily accessible. We'd pull up, there was no, you couldn't dock them there, you couldn't do it, they're DNR type docking. We'd pull up, we'd get them on the boat, and then we'd take off. Is that allowed? And I would hope we'd want that
Yep.
allowed. Okay.
Yep, that's
That's
yeah,
the big, so the motorized part and the gas part, because there would be motorized boats pulling up, and then you'd load them, and then that's allowed.
Yeah.
Okay, that's the only thing
But we're
I'd be
just getting to
concerned
the
about.
launching, to make sure there's no launching of watercraft, motorized watercraft.
And I think with the height, I mean, would that even be
Right.
possible?
I don't know that it is either, but
I mean, that's a pretty steep.
So, I mean, what if we say no launching of watercraft at all? Because you get the right person in there who's launching a canoe every day, you will have a launch built by that canoe sliding down the bank and being dragged out every day. So we could say no launching from the controlled access. And that way all vehicles would be, doesn't matter if it's motorized or not.
and if that's the intent, so I'm just trying to get us to I could care less what they drop in on the river right there personally, that, if you haven't figured that out, but others do. So I'm just trying to get this to a spot where we're not being too restrictive unintentionally, back to Angie's point. We said we don't want big power boats going in and being launched there. Jason, do you have issues if any boats are being launched there?
Well, I'm just thinking, I mean, if we're looking, if we have an issue with it's a noise issue for the motors for some folks. If you look at certain bridge accesses where bridges cross waters, there are access points that are built by people launching canoes and things. So there could potentially be an erosion concern. So if we just permit launching of any vehicle, as you mentioned, as there's a half a mile down the river, there's a public access. Launch from there. And just no launching from.
So, Mr. Chairman, the boys take a canoe, they tip it upside down, and they walk long distances. They could walk down, go onto the dock, put the canoe in, and take off, or no?
Well,
I mean, again, I
that's where
can't
we're at
believe,
right now.
I can't believe we would restrict that. A kayak is what, less than 100 pounds. They carry them like under their arm, walk down on the dock, put it in the water, take off. So I guess, again,
If we stick with just motorized and we allow recreational, and the traffic is that much smaller, that much more reasonable, less disturbance in the water, and in the foundations and in the traffic flow.
And what we could probably do, we could just go back to motorized. Don't get hung up on the electronic motor thing, because no one's ever going to make an issue out of it and just let her buck. It's a motor, trust me, it's in violation based on what we would say for language, but I'm just trying to keep it moving here.
Mr. Chair, I would,
HOA is gonna put the hammer down 10 times harder than environmental services also.
Yeah.
It'll be self-policing, I guarantee it.
Yeah.
Mr. Chair, I'd say, I think the intent here is, if I understand, what I would suggest is that we're not allowing the launching of a trailered motored vehicle. Personally, I think it's a little overreach on our part to restrict kids taking a canoe down and going canoeing.
Very much so.
So
I would agree with that.
I think it's private property. I think it'd be a nice amenity for the residents there. I think we're being a little overbearing on our restrictions.
But
You
you're
said
okay
some-
with the, but you're okay with the motorized restrictions?
I think, I think if we need to modify that to include, whether it's you indicate trailered, motorized
I like that.
vehicles, I think that's what we want to protect against. But if somebody wants to launch a canoe or a kayak, we shouldn't be restricting that.
I actually like your terminology there. Launching of trailered watercraft is prohibited.
Trailered, how do you work in the motorized aspect into it? But if it's big enough to be trailer, it probably has a motor on it, but I don't.
I think they go together. No, that's well put.
What's that?
Licensed trailer.
As a planning commission, I really don't want to be too over, we're getting pretty granular here. Jason, what do you think, though? Is that, you all right with that one? Because this would be a conditional amendment.
So depending upon how the condition flies, I like the original language.
The original.
Yep. But I'm just one, so.
Is anyone else okay with the original language?
I am, but I'd also be okay if we had the provision of really the not allowing a trailered motorized launching.
Yep.
If that's the issue. There's one close. They don't need to do it there.
You agree with the intent, but you're not hung up on the language. Mike and Sean.
I'm with that. I'm okay with that.
Mr. Chair, just to, we probably could have saved some time here. So this was section 1.3, which Commissioner Persky was pointing out. When we get to section 11 of the declaration, under the use, these areas are to be used for shared recreational by lot owners. Activities may include walking, running, bicycling, skiing, snowshoeing, swimming, fishing, sunbathing, non-motorized launching of watercraft, such as canoes, kayaks, or paddle boards. These activities shall not significantly conflict with the general public use of the public water or enjoyment of normal property rights, et cetera, et cetera.
It was really well worded.
Persky was getting stuck with the definition section, and we talk about that sometimes too. Our ordinance shouldn't really dictate what you can do. So I'm glad you found that, Jen. I think
Thank you.
you should leave that alone.
Is everyone good then? Rolling with the conditions? All right. So in that case, we'll go to findings of fact.
Mr. Chairman, aren't we going to limit what the color of the canoe can be?
Well,
I couldn't help it, I'm sorry.
There's no Green Bay logos. No Green Bay logos.
Thank you. Let's start with number 1. Is the proposal consistent with the zoning ordinance? Why or why not? Yes, sir.
It is consistent with zoning ordinance 439, sections 9.7, 9.9, 10.1, and 10.2, and also consistent with subdivision ordinance 230, sections 5 and 8.
Very good. Thanks, Rich. Appreciate it. Number 2, does the proposal conform to the comprehensive plan of the county? This-
Mr. Chair.
Yes, Dave, go ahead.
Nope, it's all you.
I would say that it does. Yeah, as far as the nature goal, I mean, I think the trail system is reasonable. And like I've said before, would be a nice amenity to for the owners there. And the other one was the lake shore. I think it's respectful too of the riverbank there and balances the interests of year-round and seasonal residents.
Very good. Right on. Thanks, Dave. Number 3, is the proposal compatible with the existing neighborhood? Why or why not?
Mr. Chair, there isn't an existing neighborhood at the moment, but I believe it will be in the future.
Well stated, Jason. Thank you. Number 4, how has the applicant demonstrated that the standards and criteria stated in the ordinance will be satisfied? Well, 1, he wrote them. As we kind of got to towards the end, he helped to write a lot of this language. And I think there's a couple comments made about the owners will self-regulate as time goes on this, so the platting process is kind of a formality.
And we also have the 6 conditions.
And we have many conditions. Thank you, Jason, for adding that. All right, so any other issues pertinent to this matter? Did we have township input again on this one? And that was, so once again, township input, plating committee recommendation. Anything else? Now we're ready for a recommendation or a motion.
I move to approve the application.
Very
I'll
good.
second that.
Okay, good. And with the 6 conditions as stated? Perfect. Okay, so all those in favor? Aye. All those opposed? All right, so recommendation for approval.
All right.
Will be.
Thank you, board and staff.
Hey, thank
Have
you.
a good night.
All right, and that brings us to agenda item number 3, and that is to consider a conditional use permit request submitted by Biogas Company RNG. I hope I didn't make an assumption there. If it is Biogas Co., let me know in a bit. Of Rogers, Minnesota, on behalf of Reek Farm LLC in Paynesville, Minnesota, according to section 4.8, 6.13, and 9.2.5 of Stearns County Land Use and Zoning Ordinance number 439. The request is to construct and operate a biogas conversion facility located in the northwest quarter in section 20, lying south of 230th Street and east of County Road 130, Zion Township. The property address is 29949 230th Street in Paynesville. All right, with that, quick roll call of members who visited this site. Jason?
Yes.
Dave?
Yes.
I also was able to. Sean?
Yes.
Mike?
Yes.
And Rich?
Yep.
All right, very good. And Heidi, back to you.
All right. So, yeah, this is a biogas conversion facility conditional use permit that we have. First one we've had in Stearns County. Specifically, they're requesting to construct a single tank anaerobic digester, a control room, and a biogas processing equipment on a property with an existing dairy farm. The renewable natural gas that is produced will be directly injected into one of the Dooley natural gas pipelines. They do also, just a note, some of the plans show feedlot expansion. That is being handled through the state. We do have Becky with our feedlot supervisor here if there's any questions related to that too, but that's not part of this permit process. The state's handling that. Property is not within any areas of concern or overlay districts. Our wetland staff did review the site. There's no current wetland there. Stormwater management plan's not required for this per Stearns County ordinance. Let's see. So access is existing to 230th Street. They'll use the existing driveways on the property. The township did review and sign off on having this facility off of a township road, accessing off a township road, so they did approve that. There's no new water or sewer proposed with this facility, no outdoor storage. Estimated traffic is 1 semi-tractor trailer every 2.5 days or 12 to 14 every month. They did submit a traffic management plan with more information on that. It's not within floodplain and the soils are suitable for this use. The applicants did talk with the Lake Henry Fire Department, which this is their area, but then they did also talk with the neighboring Painesville Fire Department too, so they're aware of the equipment and what's being constructed out here. The parking near the control room is adequate. The facility will run 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. However, there won't be staff there all the time. There'll just be maintenance and service employees as needed on site. Let's see, there's approximately 7 homes and 6 registered feedlots within a half mile of the property. The whole area is zoned agriculture 80 and is mostly agricultural land. Future land use map has this as an agricultural area. Proposed conditions, the biogas conversion facility shall be constructed and installed in accordance with the approved plans and obtain required state and county feedlot permits. And that's all that I have.
All right, very good. The applicants here on this one, go ahead, come on up.
Mr. Chair, I believe we do have one person online for this one too.
Okay. As an applicant?
Applicant,
or on? Okay.
Yep.
All right. Very cool. Yeah.
That's the party.
Yeah, very good. And I mean, you don't all have to, but if you want to, you sure can. Just state your name and address for the record. If you're going to end up providing comment, then you may as well do it now, and we'll have that.
Hello, my name is Aaron Evans. I'm owner of Biogasco, and we're proposing to install the anaerobic digester exactly as stated before. The anaerobic digester is basically a manure storage and processing tank. It is covered. The output of that is what is called digestate after it is digested, which has a very similar consistency to manure, the same nutrient content as manure. However, it no longer has the odor. It's 90% less odor than manure straight out of the farm. And it doesn't have the greenhouse gas emissions, specifically methane. Currently, any farm of this typical size would be emitting approximately enough methane into the atmosphere to heat 200 to 250 homes in Minnesota throughout the year. And this keeps that from venting to the atmosphere and puts it into the pipeline so it can actually do just that. That'll pass it on.
Yeah.
Do you want to state your address, or do they need it?
14835 Crow River Drive, Rogers, Minnesota.
Cool. All right, thank you. If there's any other, you don't have to if you don't want to, if you're not going to provide comment. Yes, sounds good.
Mr. Chair, we
should still get them all
name and
because
address
they're all
for the record,
applicants.
please. Yes.
All right, thanks, Angie. All right, fire away.
Justin Reek, 29949 230th Street.
Very good.
Lisa Reek, same address, 29949 230th Street in Painesville.
All right, thanks.
Brent Lawaji, I'm the consulting engineer on the project. 351 Burlington Circle, Marshall, Minnesota, 56258.
Very good, thank you. And then Heidi, do you know, is there anyone else on that we need to get for comment?
Yes, there's Ben online, if he wants to speak up and give his name and address.
Yep, Ben Trokel here with Central Crop Consulting, been handling the permitting and manure management end of things. And here in support with Aaron and Brent to really touch on anything regarding the permitting and manure management. The Address would be 808 East Oak Street, Redwood Falls, 56283.
All right, very good. Is there anything else any of you want to add to Heidi's comments or what's already been stated?
I think what was stated is good.
Okay, perfect. Any questions by Planning Commission members for the applicants?
Mr. Chair, question for the applicant, question for staff. So for the applicant, I don't know if it's a semantic thing, but it says it's going to be directly injected into the pipelines, but then you've also got a trucking. What's happening there?
Yeah, happy to clarify. So the gas produced at the REEC farm is upgraded. We call it upgrading to pipeline quality because biogas is in its raw form is 40% CO2 and 60% methane. So upgrading is bringing that to almost 100% methane, at which time on this site it will be injected into the pipeline. However, we are also working with Malika Enterprises, Malika Dairy in Pope County, and their gas, which the site is almost mirror image, their gas will be coming by truck, compressed natural gas, CNG, and will also share this injection point. And so we will be decanting or decompressing that gas on site and also injecting it into the pipeline.
Okay. And then a question, just sort of a random question for staff. Is there a reason there's no decommissioning process for this applicant?
Mr. Chair, Member Wienerman, honestly, the only land uses we require decommissioning, are you talking about financial guarantee?
Well, so if the site is no longer used, would we need to decommission it, or can it just be abandoned on site?
Well, that's a policy. That's a broad policy discussion that you all could have at some point. But the only thing that we do collect for a financial guarantee is, and you guys can help me, but mining, solar, met towers.
Okay.
I have a brief comment too on that. I feel like one of you, when we were visiting with you, I know we talked a little bit about, well, what would happen if you had this, if it wasn't working, if you just had it there, and I believe that it's more than adequately engineered to be a manure storage. I mean, basically, sorry, am I not close enough? So it's more than adequately engineered to continue to be manure storage, and so we already have, and you can see on the drawing, there's outdoor pits that are currently manure storage, and so, there's and Brent, you should jump in here as the engineer, but basically we could continue, utilizing that as a safe and well-engineered structure to store the dairy manure if it wasn't being digested, which we certainly hope isn't the case. But yeah, I mean, we thought a lot about that too in terms of, well, how do we get rid of this if we need to, and it shouldn't be an issue.
Okay, that's good enough for me.
That's completely correct, and I'll just add that the other equipment, the mechanical equipment, is all skid mounted and would be pulled off.
Okay, I'm good.
Cool. Mr. Chair, I did have a question for the applicants.
Yeah.
Very intriguing concept, to be sure. I guess I was just curious. I think you said you had like a 600 head dairy operation right now.
Yeah.
Does a digester like you're installing, let's say you wanted to double the size of your herd, or, I mean, is there a capacity limit on a digester like this, or would you have to add another one to?
Yeah, so yes, there is a capacity limit to digesters. However, it's a function of retention time. So there's quite a bit of buffer because you can balance the capacity. In this case, it's just over 1 million gallons with the amount of time that you want the manure to be in the digester. So there is some give and take. This particular digester is engineered well over capacity to the existing operation and hoping to fill that up over time. And then if the farm continues to expand, hopefully they do and business is good, then there would be an opportunity for a second one, but that would be many years down the road.
Okay, thank you.
Very good. Any other questions? Go ahead.
Okay, I just have a couple of questions. Is this a proven system or is this a new technology? And if it is a proven system, how many operations of this model do we have in operation and how long?
Yeah, so depends what you mean by proven system. So anaerobic digestion has been around for 50 plus years. Denmark currently has 40 to 50% of all of their gas in the pipeline is renewable natural gas from anaerobic digestion, and they're planning to have 100% by, I think it's 2030. So this is a common practice, not just in Denmark. They happen to have a very high percentage of it, but throughout Minnesota, there has been anaerobic digestion for many years, particularly on the large farms. To name a few, Davis Family Dairies and who am I thinking of in Morris? Riverview. Yeah, Riverview Dairy. And so also the equipment, for example, the upgrader for processing the raw gas. This exact design, there are maybe 40 or 50 operating from the same company, but there are also probably 50 different companies that have similar technology. The digester is custom made for the site, but the concept is all over the world.
I know you mentioned Denmark. Do you have any, I don't know, partnership or anything with a company that's foreseeing moving a system into Sauk Center?
No, zero.
To your point, okay, so this is just a little bit of a personal question. This is the first time I've experienced one of these coming up. This same concept, the same method works if you were to just put vegetation in there. It's just that the cows help speed up the process, basically, right, with their digestive system?
Yeah, luckily, the cow manure, well, first of all, the cow feed is specifically balanced to provide, perfect digestion. Oh. And so what comes out is also balanced perfectly for digestion, doesn't require any additives or any, introduction of bacteria. However, or in addition, I should say, is one of my partner who, helped out on this design actually developed the first ever crop-powered digester. Yeah. And so that is fed by silage, corn silage, just as, similarly to what the cows eat. And 100% silage based. And interesting fact if you want to get into it. So if you go plant by plant, and you grow one corn plant and or two corn plants, right, and you put one into ethanol and one into anaerobic digestion, you get 70% more energy out of putting that plant into anaerobic digestion and making methane versus making ethanol. I'm not knocking ethanol at all, but it is, suitable. Yeah.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that. I had to nerd out a little bit back to the old biology days, but it's fascinating and it's cool to see this stuff because it's an interesting change to agriculture that is encouraging. It's cool stuff. So
another application, and I've seen something very similar to this, is the waste treatment plant for City of St. Cloud.
Absolutely.
Captures the methane. Yeah. And they run their huge engines off of that drive the generators that produce electricity that goes right back into the plant out there. It's quite impressive to see.
And Cold Spring as well, they heat their digesters in wastewater treatment plant with the gas off of the digesters.
Yeah. Yeah. So this is a really good thing.
Yeah. Very good. Any other questions for the applicants on this one? Is there anyone here from the public on this one? Okay. Again, not seeing a rush. A motion would be in order.
Still moved.
Thanks, Jason. Seconded by Rich to close the public hearing. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed? All right. Public hearing is closed. Any other discussion items on this one before we go to findings of fact?
Mr. Chairman, I just want to say I met with Mr. Evans and known the Reek family for a long time. This is exciting. It has a lot of future with organics, turkey litter, chicken manure, wastewater, city wastewater. And the other company that Mike referenced, there is another company with locations planned in Painesville, Freeport, and Sauk Center, and those are going to occur in their industrial sites. And the county, to my understanding, won't have anything to do with them, correct? So the county won't have anything to do with them, but there are 3 planned in Stearns County. And then there's, they want to have a total of 14 in the state, that company, but this is different, very unique, on-site, which is, eliminates all the trucking, eliminates all that stuff. So I think it's going to be a good mix.
Yeah. Do you want to provide comment?
Mr. Chair, my understanding is it's not certain whether they'll be in municipal jurisdiction completely. If not, then our zoning ordinance would still come into play, as it will for this site, for permitting the feedlot components to making sure that they meet setback with the ordinance. And that would be it, and the rest of it would be the state.
Cool. Thank you. Good comments. Thanks, Jeff. All right. We ready for findings? All right. So number 1, is the proposal consistent with the zoning ordinance? Why or why not?
Mr. Chair, it is consistent with Land Use and Zoning Ordinance 439, Sections 4.8, 6.13, and 9.2.5F.
Awesome. Thanks, Sean. 2, does the proposal conform to the comprehensive plan of the county? List applicable sections.
Mr. Chair, under agricultural goals, number 1, support agriculture as a desirable land use for the long term and facilitate diversification of the county's agricultural economy. Also under agricultural goals, number 4, strive for and support higher farm profitability and family farm stability. And then also under agricultural use policies, primary land uses in the agricultural areas should be agriculturally oriented, including animal agriculture, crop production, and specialized agricultural enterprise in combination with limited agricultural related business, solar and wind, recreational, institutional, and open space uses.
Wow, well stated, Rich. Thank you. I really like the last one, too. That was good.
Mr. Chairman, could he be a little bit more specific?
Yeah. I'm sure he could have. Could you
Did I wake you, Jeff?
No, thank you.
3, is the proposal compatible with the existing neighborhood? Why or why not?
Mr. Chair, I believe that it is. It's an addition close to existing facilities, relatively minor footprint compared to the entire operation there. In fact, probably would be make for a better neighbor with the reduced odor emissions and things like that. So I believe that it is.
Yeah, very good. Thanks, Dave. Well stated. 4, how has the applicant demonstrated that the standards and criteria stated in the ordinance will be satisfied?
Mr. Chair, Jason Wiener, with the 2 conditions will meet the ordinance requirements.
Right. Yeah, thanks, Jace. All right. And then any other issues pertinent to this matter?
Mr. Chairman, I would suggest that you identify that you were wise enough and futuristic enough to contact the township about road usage and got the township sign off on it, and the fire departments. I think that's very proactive.
I appreciate that comment, and being in this role before, you know how much that helps in doing your homework ahead of time, and just even having all of you here tonight is helpful. Whether your comment was needed or not, you were there in case the discussion came up. So also goes to show to the prep. Nice job. Any other comments anyone has on this one?
But I'll make a motion.
Hey, right on, Rich. Okay, you're on topic. Go ahead.
I'll make a motion to approve.
Very good. Have a second.
Second.
All right, so motion by Rich to recommend approval with the 2 conditions, seconded by Dave. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed? All right. Hey, good luck with the project. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. That takes us to agenda item number 4. And on this one, we're not voting, so if you want to come up right away and introduce yourselves. All right, so number 4 is to consider a request submitted by Sarah and Stuart Nelson in care of Rinky Noonan of St. Cloud to amend the section 10.2.25 of Stearns County Land Use and Zoning Ordinance number 439 related to islands. The applicants own an island on the Sauk River chain of lakes and would like to place a recreational vehicle on the island. All right, so then, Heidi, you got this?
Sure. So yeah, the request is to allow recreational vehicles on islands in Stearns County. Currently, residential dwellings are prohibited on islands. Recreational vehicles are considered a dwelling. So the amendment is to allow for recreational vehicles on islands. So we did reach out to some other counties, got some feedback from them, which is listed in the staff report. And then I did review the Minnesota DNR model shoreline ordinance, and I couldn't find anything in there addressing dwellings or RVs on islands. So that was silent to that issue. So after discussion tonight, then on May 9th, the county board will review the request and then set a public hearing likely for June 6th to make that decision. So this is just a recommendation, a review, not a public hearing at this point.
Okay, very good. I have some questions, but we're going to wait here on this one. Do you want to state your name and address for the record?
Sure. Adam Ripple, Rinky Noonan offices.
I'm Sarah Nelson. My address is 14910 McGinty Road West in Wayzata.
All right, very good.
We own a property on Crays Lake.
On Crays, okay. Trying to think what island that is now. The U-shaped one?
It is.
Yeah, okay. So one of my questions, what do we have, about 7 or 8 islands in the entire county that this could even kind of apply to, where anyone would put a recreational vehicle?
Well, yeah, so any island.
Got 3 on Coronas, a bunch on the chain.
Yeah, I don't know the exact
only
number.
Only a few of them are actually decent sized. A couple in the
Right.
Mississippi, but I don't even know if those are included. I literally was like, so I fish all the lakes, and I'm like, I think there's only like 8 of them, maybe.
Right.
That's what we were thinking, is maybe 8 to 12.
Yeah.
And then on the Mississippi, depends where the thread of the river is.
Right.
So I think the only ones big enough to meet all setbacks would be the 3 on Coronas.
Yeah. Right.
That's our observation.
There's one big one on Winter Island, real close to yours. May make it, but either way, I mean, you're talking a couple. So the recommendation would be to modify it to state recreational vehicles are allowed.
That's what the request is. Yes.
Could I address
Yeah,
the board?
fire away. Yeah, please do. Yep.
So there's, as far as the GIS shows, there's maybe 8 or 10 islands within the chain. Most of them of relative decent size have some kind of structure or camper already on them.
Yep.
This island is about 4 acres in size, which is much bigger than the vast majority of the riparian lots on the chain. We talked a bunch about what kind of ordinance revision to request. And so we tried to strike kind of a respectful tone, understanding that there's a lot of concerns about environmental concerns with lakeshore. And so rather than a full-blown request for all residential dwellings, the thought was to pare it back and have something that is kind of a fairly modest request. And so that's where that recreational vehicle comes in. We have had a survey of the island. There is a small building envelope that meets setbacks. I understand that FEMA has mapped all of this. They kind of paint in very broad strokes when it comes to islands on the chain, it appears. But the island does have significant elevation. There's about 10 additional feet above the floodway elevation. So we're actually started the process to amend that map. So I understand where there may be some concerns about development of an island even in some low level, may create some harm. I don't think this is the island that creates those concerns, though, because there are ability to meet setbacks, there's the ability to be out of the floodway, and quite frankly, the footprint of the island is quite a bit bigger than many of the surrounding riparian lots.
Yeah, I agree. I know the island well, so it.
And if I might, so the island is zoned R1. The primary use within R1 is a residential dwelling. The island can't be used for that based on that 10.2.5, I think it is.
Well, and on Horseshoe there, that must have been grandfathered in, that old cabin that's on Horseshoe on one of the islands.
Yeah,
I mean,
pretty
it's
much
well
any.
kept up now, but it.
Right,
it's
those
been
were
a long
probably
time.
pre-ordinance structures.
I did do some research back into, the first county shoreline ordinance was adopted in 1972, and then it changed again in 2000 when we adopted 209 and now 439. And before 209 was adopted, which is the ordinance preceding the one you're looking at tonight, all islands were listed as special protection ag. That was the zoning district at the time, and residential dwelling units weren't allowed. So the ones that are on islands are pre-existing non-conforming structures.
Got it. Okay.
Mr. Chair, a couple questions. So when we're looking at this, permanent residential dwellings will continue to be prohibited. Is there an expectation the RV would be could be a permanent non-residential dwelling? So you haul an RV out there and can stay there?
We're trying to work within the constraints of the existing definitions within the ordinance. And so under the definitions, anything that's left in place for 30 days or longer is deemed recreational vehicle permanent. The intent would not be that it's a homestead. This is a place to come out, camp in the summer, and have a pretty cool experience on land you own that you otherwise can't do a whole heck of a lot with.
So a question for staff. So if, not saying these folks would do it, but if someone else on another island we approve this, they put an RV on their land and then abandon it, do we have any recourse for removal of that RV after it's having been abandoned?
Mr. Chair, Member Wienerman, I suppose it would be no different than abandoned property that they don't pay their taxes, then it goes tax forfeit, and then we're responsible for removal costs, et cetera.
Well, I'm assuming they would still pay the taxes, but the RV would be moldering on the island.
Correct.
I've seen a lot of RVs on the back 40.
We would have no control over that happening.
Okay.
We don't have a
Because it's still on
maintenance.
private property,
Right.
right?
Right.
Unless the.
And then safety. So if you're out there and heaven forbid a fire happens or something else happens, has the fire departments weighed in on this?
No, we haven't gotten comments from we haven't reached out for public comments yet on this request.
I don't know if the applicant has. That would be, again, the burden is on the applicant, right? On these applications for ordinance amendments. So you can certainly ask them. We have not done that yet.
Okay.
Typically, we would think about those sorts of public hearing notices before the county commissioners meeting.
Have you thought about public safety?
We have thought about safety. We have not solicited comments from the fire department. The structure they're hoping to put out there, again, is pretty modest.
Okay.
They're not looking to occupy it year-round, so.
Yep. Okay.
Yeah.
And then to tag on to that, how about first responders if somebody has a heart attack out there? How do you get there?
No, true.
There's all the possibilities.
There's all the I agree.
Look at all the angles. I'm not saying yes or no here.
Yeah. I personally don't have, well, sorry, speak closer. I don't have a problem with this really. And I realize there's things to consider, and I think the fire side of it. But also look at it, right now, you can tent there, it's allowed. Same things can happen, you can still have a heart attack out on the island, a fire can still happen. So I don't know if this is changing that. And for the, I also don't worry about it turning into snowballing, right? Turning into this monstrous thing, because in our county, back to the point, we have like 8 islands that this maybe could even apply to. And some of those already have uses that would prohibit it from ever happening. So I think it's workable. I would be for recommending a modification for those recreational vehicles. But I'm usually pretty open on that kind of stuff. So if others have other feelings, we're just looking to make a recommendation. I probably should have mentioned that. We don't have to vote on anything. We're just looking to make a recommendation one way or another.
So with an RV, is there a septic system, or what do you do with wastewater? How does that handle?
So I believe the plan would potentially be to have some kind of holding tank, whether that's a porta-john or something like that.
And again, we haven't worked out all those details because the use would first have to be established, but holding tanks a holding tank wouldn't be allowed in terms of an actual installed holding tank, so might have to be something in the, I forget what they call them, like a portable waste system. And although this isn't relevant to what you're looking at tonight is an ordinance amendment, not specific to this property. There's a lot of things that need to happen if this ordinance changes in order for an RV to go out on that property. Variance from the township, they don't allow RVs. Variance from the county, likely to meet setbacks, not confirmed. And then as Mr. Ripple indicated, a letter of map revision. So this would be the start. There would be a lot more things that would need to occur on their particular island, but we're not here to talk about their particular island. We're here to talk about the whole county ordinance. Okay.
And the same setbacks. And to your, I'm glad you clarified that, Angie, and that's part of the reason I don't have a problem is because there's a lot of things that are concerns with the water, right, with things on islands, but we have a lot of setback laws and things like that to address those. And so if all those conditions have to be met, I don't see why we rule out a recreational vehicle.
My understanding is that it would still require, under Section 4, I think it was, there's still a permit required with some additional oversight for the placement of a structure out there.
There are requirements that need to be met outside of just it being an allowed use. And that's all we're really looking at is a recreational vehicle, an allowed use. Does anyone feel strongly that it should not be? I don't want to control the discussion.
So we should not change the ordinance?
Yeah.
I do.
Okay. And your logic on that, Jason, is?
It works as it currently is. I think the risk for environmental damage, particularly on an island, is extreme in these areas. The safety factors there. And, you know, when we do our site visits, if you look hard, there's abandoned RVs all over Stearns County. And I could see that happening here, where somebody puts the RV out here in 2 years, 30 years down the road, we had a moldering RV sitting on the lot. That's a beautiful thing to go fishing past. So I'm just thinking in terms of the long term, I think this would result in a negative condition for the county.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, we're going to consider this, so if you don't mind, I'd ask a few questions as a heads up for the board, and then also that might help you with some questions. The camping, obviously I'm most familiar with the 3 islands on Lake Cronus, and they only allow daytime camping. You can't stay overnight, and that's the safety, all the safety stuff, and that's why I'd be curious, in either the applicant or Mr. Ripple, when did you buy this, and were you aware of the restriction when you did buy it?
The property was purchased in 20 2019, 2020.
I believe.
The ordinance, yes, is in place. There was a camper on the property at the time it was purchased, and that has since been removed.
So in just the thought of, is it just going to be left out there and, you know, degrading out there? We can get it out and we can take it off. So it's movable.
I'm not impugning you. I'm not saying that you would do this.
I know.
But I mean, the ordinance is countywide, so it's anybody else.
Right.
So.
But it can be, oh, I'm sorry. Just wanted to point out, it can be done. It can be moved out and it can be removed. And so it doesn't have to just stay out there and degrade.
And Mr. Chairman, so the camper was there, you bought it in 2020. Did you talk to staff or ask staff about having the camper?
And that's why we're here making an ordinance request. Right.
But I'm sorry, Mr. Ripple, did someone ask staff, can you have a camper there? We're thinking about buying the island. There's a camper there. Can the camper stay? Can we bring a camper on? Were any of those discussions, did that occur?
Yes, there were discussions with staff. Again, we're here asking for an ordinance revision, not specific permit requests for this island.
Because I asked staff, Mr. Chairman, and that's why I'm asking, they were told that the camper was in violation and that it couldn't stay there, and another one could not be brought on. So I'm all for property rights. I'm a little bit less sympathetic when you know you couldn't, or at least you were told you couldn't do something currently. That kind of gets a little dicey, because I know there's few islands, but 3 of them on Lake Coronis, and I certainly wouldn't want something like this on all 3 islands on Lake Coronis. Well, one of them it won't, because it's in the land trust, so that nothing could happen there. But
I take real issue with the insinuation that there's some violation here. We're going through the right process. We're asking for an ordinance revision so that we can comply with the requirements of the county. To suggest that the Nelsons are scofflaws is just patently false.
And Mr. Chairman, I'm sorry, I'm not sure why Mr. Ripple's, I'm asking a question. I can ask him here, I can ask him at the board meeting, or I don't have to ask any questions at the board, and I'll vote against it. But I'd like to get information is what I'm trying to do. So what I asked and what I found out was the questions were asked about the camper. They were told that it couldn't stay there, and they were told that a new camper couldn't be brought there. So, okay, so we can go through that. And then I guess maybe I'll ask Angie, because I don't want to make somebody more excited. What happened did you hear that the camper was being taken off and a new one was getting brought on? Let's tell that story.
Mr. Chair, Commissioner Bertram, and I did talk to Adam about this and Mr. Stewart at the time. And so we had gotten a complaint last fall that the old camper was being taken off and there was going to be a new one going on. So I went out there to try to stop a new one from going on. Honestly, it was a threatened violation, and under statute, we have the right to do that. So the old one came off on a barge, and the new one did not go out because we had issued a stop work order. And then, honestly, since then, I hadn't heard from the Nelsons, so we now we have this amendment in front of you. So related or not related, it all is, right? Because you probably wouldn't be here tonight just asking for an amendment if you didn't have an island in question. But that's the background, and that's in public record. I would say we probably had over 100 phone calls when that island was for sale. One of them was from Mr. Nelson, and we told everyone the same thing. So just FYI, we do document that.
And Mr. Chairman, Angie, have you had any requests for any of the other islands about doing something like this?
Mr. Chair, Commissioner Bertram, we have not, other than, as you said, on Lake Cronus, the township owns an island and they allow for, daytime use, but no recreational vehicles.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you.
I just want to say for us, because I just want to be clear, we just want to have a nice experience with our kids and just use it as like a camping. we care about the community. We want to do the right thing. We're trying to do this process to do the right thing. So I don't want it to be understood that we are trying to violate the law in any way. We're trying to follow the process to have a nice experience for our kids. As they're growing up, as a kid, my grandpa had a cabin on Lake Watab in Stearns County. I spent a lot of summers up here. I enjoy it. We like the community. We like the lake. We're not trying to violate anything. There was an RV that was deteriorating. We didn't want to stay in that. We wanted that removed. We got it removed. There was a stop order on putting a new movable vehicle out there. We stopped. It's not out there. We're trying to do the right thing. We just want to be able to use our property. Okay, if anybody has a personal concern about me and my family and our use on our property, please talk to me. We don't want to do anything disrespectful or illegal. We're trying to follow the rules.
Yeah.
So please, if you have any questions or concerns, we're more than happy to listen to them.
Appreciate it. Yeah, and we're, again, looking, it's not just this instance, we're looking at the entire county. So, yeah, as we go through the discussions, this isn't just an isolated incident, and we need to keep that in our comments appropriate on that side of it. Jason, appreciate you sharing your thoughts. Dave, thoughts you want to share on this as we're making our recommendation?
Not at this time.
Okay. All right. Not a strong opinion one way or another on it at this time. All right. Well, I'll state mine as we go down the line here. Talking to somebody who's on the water all the time, and I go to islands all the time and stay at them. And I fish around islands. You go to Lake of the Woods, you go to Rainy Lake, there's a lot of precedents where there's buildings and structures on islands, and they don't in my viewpoint, they don't deteriorate from the environment or the aesthetics or anything. In some cases, they can contribute to kind of a neat atmosphere. But again, that's based on my experience. I'm for it. We have setbacks to deal with the environmental thing, conditions, other ordinance requirements to meet, and I think that helps address a lot of the concerns that I would have. Sean.
I'm torn, Mike, because there's an awful lot of good points made on both sides of this argument. I'm certainly for land use and recreational use for a landowner, but I don't want to open a can of worms here. I'm curious about, I was looking at some of these comments from Beltrami County about dealing with wastewater and things like that. So I think we do have a little more that we have to kind of look at as far as an impact. I mean, when you get an RV, then what's next? We need a shed. Can we get a well? Things like this. It just kind of doesn't really stop, in my opinion. So I'm cautious with this one.
Okay, very good. Mike?
I'm cautious with it, but yet I'm limited for it, especially with the other, the setbacks and other provisions that the county has that you could control it.
Okay. All right. Thanks, Mike. Rich?
I have some longtime friends, real long. I think they're into the second, maybe the third generation. There's an island that they use on Canals Lake, and it's daytime use.
Yep.
They don't camp overnight.
I know which island you're talking about.
Yeah, okay. So anyways, as far as us using islands for recreational use, I don't have an issue with that. But when I'm looking at the reason for the requested change here on the documentation that we received, it makes the statement, the desire to place a modest trailer or structure on this island. I guess we need to be clear what we're talking about.
Well, look at it this way, Rich, and just thinking through. So what we'd be looking at is changing it for the entire county. So outside of this incident, what are the things that would concern you?
Flooding.
The flooding side. Okay. Yeah. Okay. So, and I think that's a fair one.
This doesn't have an issue. It's what, 10 today or 10 feet above?
Yeah. There's some high spots on that island. Yeah.
So.
And it would have to meet, quick question for staff, it would have to still meet all the floodplain requirements just like you would for any other setback, correct?
Right, that's correct. It would need to meet setbacks, elevations. Yep.
I think we need to have a lot more discussion about this whole thing.
Okay.
And nothing against you personally. I don't have anything like that.
Okay. Well, so our goal tonight was to make, or was just to make a recommendation one way or another, and I think what we've probably done to pass on to the county board, and please let me know if we need to do anything else. It sounds like we kind of have a split viewpoints as a planning commission on this one, which, Jeff, you can bring that to the board, the points both for and against, or to the county commissioners, I should state. Talked about a lot of different considerations, so anything else needed from us on this one?
I just had Mr. Chair, and I'm new to this whole thing. The fact that we're talking about an amendment to the ordinance, I mean, could there not still be some, a structure or an RV could be allowed, but we would define some restrictions at some point if they were to come back with an application?
Like a condition. Would a conditional use be
would it be
way to approach it?
That's a question for her.
I mean, I understand we've got to be careful because we're opening the can for every island in the county. I understand that, but can't you still take it on a case-by-case basis and have some restrictions or, because I could, if an RV is out there, the next thing you know, maybe there's a tool shed, and I mean, where does it stop? And, I mean, I guess trying to accommodate the landowner, but can't you still take it on a case-by-case basis? I guess what I'm trying to get some clarification on is.
Staff, I'll take a shot at addressing that, Dave, and then staff will probably correct me. So that's kind of a little bit what I was getting at with the additional requirements that it would have to meet. So there's setbacks. There's still only certain things you can do on any particular piece of property. And so some of the things you got a recreational vehicle. I think even today you could put technically a water-oriented accessory structure on that, correct? Or do you have to have a residence in order to do that?
No, that would be correct. You could put an water-oriented or an outbuilding. It's only dwellings that are prohibited on islands.
Yeah, so you could still do that today if they have a
but
shed.
For the floodplain.
But for the floodplain, yep. So it still has to, have to meet certain requirements, but they could do that either way right now. But yet they couldn't put 2 or 3 or 4 of them on because that's not allowed either. And I don't know if that addresses your question. It's still not a conditional use, but Angie, correct me.
Mr. Chair, and Adam can weigh in on this as well. I think one of the first suggestions was that you were going to propose it as a conditional use. The Planning Commission could make that recommendation and say that if you're going to support this concept to the board, that you would do so, but it would have to be by conditional use permit.
Yeah.
That could be a recommendation to the board.
Okay. Thanks for. Should have just had Angie answer right away. I should have saved time. Thanks, Angie.
With something like a 10-year term on it or something?
Well, I suppose you could make it an interim, and then you would have terms to it.
Because then it can also be pulled if they're not following the rules, or if they're overbuilding, or
if we got deteriorated structure, that we could force them to move it or remove it.
Correct?
Correct.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a, thanks for sharing that one. With that, I would also think you could probably conditional use or interim use, then you can tie various conditions to it as well to address each unique situation, because all 8 to 10 islands that it applied to are unique.
I mean, if you have to barge it out there, I mean, this is essentially a permanent structure out there. I mean, you don't drive it off and on, and
it's not easily moved.
not easily, you know.
Mr. Chairman, if I could offer in a suggestion, there seems like a lot of questions, and obviously what we like to do is have the committees do the heavy lifting and do the work. You may want to continue it. There's a lot of questions that have been raised, and dig into it a little bit deeper before it comes to us to answer a lot of the questions that you're raising. This would be a more appropriate place, I think, potentially for that to happen.
Yeah, that's good feedback, and if that's possible to do, I'd be all for a conditional use or interim use type look at this. Would the rest of the Planning Commission members be open to looking at something like that?
So are we still thinking about changing the ordinance to make an RV and an island an interim or conditional use? Would that be an ordinance change, or can they do that at the moment? So it would still be an ordinance change.
Correct.
It's hard to vote to approve an ordinance change if you don't know how it's going to be used or what the implication of that is, and how the land is going to be used. At 4 acres, that's a decent size. I mean, it's not like it's high elevation, but without knowing how, I don't know if it's chicken and the egg or what it is, or the cart before the horse, but it's like, I don't know, it's hard to vote for an ordinance change if you don't really know if there's a way to control what is ultimately there.
Mr. Chair, I think what I heard Commissioner Bertram say is, would you want to continue this? So now the applicants have heard over, I don't know, maybe 30-minute discussion, heard concerns both for and against. We'd have to check our 60 days, but if they were amenable to continuing it for further discussion, they could come back with performance standards for building on an island, having an RV on an island, and addressing some of those things. That would be up, I think that's what I heard Commissioner Bertram say. Obviously, the board, Planning Commission would have to agree to that, and we'd have to check our 60 days.
And Mr. Chairman, let me remind us, several times people said, this isn't specific. So I caution you to change ordinances for something specific. When we all went through training, we all heard from different assistant county attorneys that said, never act on something with the person in front of you doing it for the person. You do it for the next person. And so let's do it for the 14 islands. Right now we haven't had any requests, but whatever we could do or would do potentially would open that up. And then again, do it generically where no matter who, if it was you or me or anybody else, what's the good of the whole? What's the good of the order? So keep that in mind when and if you do continue the conversation. And then one question, I have some questions that I would have you add. The liability if a fire department emergency can't get to you if there is an incident, how does that work? I don't know. But if I know in Cronus that was what they were really stringent upon, saying that's why you can't stay there, because the township, now the Minnesota Land Trust, would be liable if they let somebody there, something did happen, and they couldn't get help to them. There'd be a liability to that. So just some of those things you might want to just, again, for all 14 islands or however many islands there are, I wasn't trying to be specific either. However, we've got a specific situation in front of us. So it's always better to be proactive than reactive, but this is then let's not allow ourselves to be reactive to this then if we want to be proactive and just pretend that all 14 islands are going to ask for this, and what would you do?
But I guess I'm trying to be, protect the landowners too. I mean, not every island's the same. And I guess I could see where there's some islands that may be something reasonable. I guess that's where I'm coming from. Not knowing the island, not looking at it, not understanding it. Yeah. Some islands are going to be, what we're talking about is not an option. So and again, I'm new to this thing. So.
Yeah, no, I appreciate your comments, Dave, and they're good questions.
So, Mr. Chair, in relation to continuing this, if we were to explore the option of continuing this, do we have specific questions we need to have answered to continue this?
I would ask the committee this, or those that mentioned. I heard a lot of people that sounded like they would be for this if it was a conditional, if the ordinance change allowed for it with a conditional use or an interim use type permit. And I think you guys chime in on this. I'm just trying to speak for the group. And that we would want to understand the trade-offs or the things that could be considered with that process, which would be conditions and things like that that are tied to any application. Is there any other questions that anyone has on that?
I'll be the first one to say, I would like to have a site visit before I okay anything on this.
So in which case, then you're advocating
without-
for an
with everything
IUP or a
else.
CUP process where you
Right.
can look at it situationally, like what Dave's stating.
Yep.
So that's a question for staff. If we do a conditional use permit and then go down that venue, how do we do a site visit?
I'll run you over there.
We'll figure it out in the red kayak.
Okay. Without a motor
Yeah,
from,
I'm sure your chair would help you get out there. Our sheriff's deputies have boats as well.
Okay. Just logistically, I mean.
Right, we'd have to get creative with,
Okay.
and just to be clear, we're talking about a site visit for a CUP, not for this ordinance amendment.
Correct.
Yes.
So I think,
Yeah, I was looking for
back
a
to
signature, yeah.
Member Wienerman's point, there's been a lot of discussion, the applicants have been hearing it. If you want this item to be continued, we do have time under the 60 days to continue it, for them to come back with some more information based on what they've heard tonight.
Yeah.
That's up to the planning commission, or if the applicants say, no, we want you to decide tonight, then that's a choice
Yeah.
too.
So would you be open to continuing this? And if you did, I think one thing that would be helpful would just be you'd be helping us to look at what those CUP and IUP requirements would be. So what would be some of the considerations that would be best practices to consider if we were going to go down that process in the future? Is there any other thoughts or comments that anyone would want to see to explore that as an option? Or does it even need to be continued? That's the other thing I'm going to ask. Is there what could they do that and bring back to us?
My feeling is I don't see a need to continue. If we approve it with to be approved with an interim use or a CUP, that would weed out any problems of nonconformance, and it wouldn't be allowed anyway.
So if I understand right, so we have a recommendation to change the ordinance, to amend the ordinance. So the soft recommendation was amend the ordinance to make this a conditional use or interim use within the current ordinance.
To allow it under the current ordinance as a conditional or interim use.
Okay.
Wouldn't it have to be continued anyway at that point? I mean, aren't there different conditions and qualifications that need to be met to make an application?
But we're not voting on this scenario. All we are doing is making a recommendation that we as a planning commission recommend that this would be allowed as an IUP or a CUP under that ordinance. And then that would go to the county commissioners, who are the only people that can make the change, because they're elected officials or the legislative group that can make that ordinance change.
Mr. Chair, Sean, I think I'm on a little bit of your same wavelength, and as Commissioner Bertram said, for the Planning Commission to do the heavy lifting here would be if you make a recommendation for this use to be allowed as a CUP or an IUP. Huge difference. You have to choose one. And then secondly would be, what performance standards do you want, if any, to go along with that now? Is that going to be on staff between now and when the public hearing is, or are you going to ask the applicant to help do that? If so, we're not going to do all that tonight, right? So there would need to be a pause. and then come back
Okay.
with, and again, I'd like to hear from the applicants, if they want you to act tonight on what you know, that's a choice. If they are willing to come back with something else, then that's a choice for you to consider.
Angie, what other performance standards would we be looking at? So outside of what already exists for setbacks, are you saying additional things like considering safety and those types of items?
Like I said, I don't think I can come up with that tonight. I don't think any of us can probably come up with that list right now. But
Okay.
if that's, you're the chair,
Okay.
you decide how you want to go with the meeting tonight.
If that's what would all be needed, yeah, we're not in a spot to then probably make that recommendation tonight. But if it's something that you guys as applicants would want to do, is come back looking at it. It looks like this would have traction as an IUP or a CUP, and then there would be some, to Angie's points, okay, what are the additional considerations or standards that should be met underneath those that might be different than if you're just building on a residence or...
Sure, and I think we're totally open to working through some kind of additional land use permit process, IUP, CUP. We had talked about that to begin with, so that's not, a deal breaker. You do have already some additional, you have performance standards for these recreational vehicles. I'm honestly not sure what additional standards might be required beyond those just because it's on an island, but so if you have some and you want us to come up with standards, I'd like some more direction.
So the things I heard that I think might be helpful would be like the safety, all right? So emergency situations. What are some of the steps or processes that would be followed under an IUP to notify different local authorities to come up with a plan or let them know that there's something there? I did hear waste management and water management, things like that. Water usage, or I guess where water's coming from, or wells probably would be a challenge. Part of it, I hate to get too prescriptive on all these things within a CUP too. Back to the point of that process forces you to vet some things, but I don't think we have enough detail tonight to at least to pass it on to the county commissioners with something that they could easily vote on.
And it's something that Angie could maybe help them with, a list of things that we might be looking for.
Sorry, I'm just texting Deb. My laptop's going to die any second.
While she's doing that, Mr. Chairman, my only concern again is, I think one of my first questions I got jumped on, don't make it specific.
I don't think we are right now.
Well, but again, Mr. Chairman, only because I'm concerned, because we're going to have to deal with it. We're saying, what do you want? What do you need? How would you tailor this? I think you really have to look at it then. If what I was criticized for earlier, we have to look at it if 14 islands ask for this. What's the 14 questions? Not you specifically, but the 14 questions. So I'd be hesitant and uncomfortable that you're asking, a dairy farm, what do you want the feedlot requirements to be, on a specific feedlot. Let's ask the questions in the global part of what do we want it to look like for 14 islands.
Oh, I see what you're saying. And I'll apologize if I miscommunicated or if that came off the wrong way. Yeah, this would help us to look at this from an ordinance perspective. I mean, as the applicant, you're looking at this thing. What are the considerations that we should be across the county that would make this be like, yeah, these are the right things to look at? And I'm stating this as someone, I don't have major concerns. So if there's others that, I'm just trying to speak for the group, if there's others that have specific thoughts, just share those, right, with the group to help guide this.
Well, this is a first, and we're all trying to figure it out.
Yeah, and I just don't, if we're, again, continuing it, which probably is right, because it sounds like there's a few I's that need to be dotted yet, but what direction are we giving? What are the things that we are going to need the next time? in order to be able to make a recommendation one way or another on this.
Yeah, I don't know that I could vote to support the amendment change unless there's some way to control what is on that island. And just blanket, except for recreational vehicles, then I don't know that I could vote to support that ordinance change.
And even that phrase recreational vehicles is wide open. It could be a vastly different number of things.
Yeah, so, I mean, I appreciate wanting the family experience. I applaud you for that, but if we change the ordinance without being able to have conditions, then I don't.
Well, what we're saying is no, we could. That'd be the continuous use permit. That'd be the CUP process. That's where you put conditions on it. The interim use is another way to have conditions tied. Conditional use goes with the island forever, whatever island it ends up being. An interim use is for a set duration. Right. So they work a little differently. Is there any other major differences between the two when it comes to conditions or fundamental framework?
I'd say the only other one would be sale of property, right? So that triggers the permit to expire, so that could get creative.
Well, which is a little bit why the IUP probably would make more sense than the CUP. You could still do all the conditions, and then it sticks if the property changes.
Again, I'm just looking at the proposed amendment there that talks about, dwellings are prohibited, except for RVs, and then but if it doesn't really talk about, it seems pretty wide open to me, as that language is currently there.
So Angie, as a consideration, we have the vacation home rental conditional use permit standard. Could that serve as a template model upon which we could base a use permit for this? So there's a variety of conditions in the vacation home rental. So they're not renting it out. I mean, hopefully not renting it out. But there's a variety of conditions in that. It talks about septic system needs and other things. Can that be a starting point template upon which we look at conditions for the interim use for a recreational vehicle on an island?
Mr. Chair, I feel like I'm going to repeat myself for the third time or fourth. I don't think we can come up with those standards tonight.
Yep.
If the applicant doesn't think that they heard enough from you on what your concerns might be or what a new proposal could look like, then I think you hear from them that they want you to act on it given what you know tonight. Otherwise, I think that what I heard, I'm sure you all probably heard the same things, and we can go back and watch this tomorrow, but risk for environmental damage, safety, abandoned RVs, long-term negative impacts, permit IUP, CUP, sewage treatment system, those, you're familiar with performance standards, right? So you had the biogas application tonight. So biogas, CUP, if you want one, here's all the things you need to do. So all the things you need to do is what we need to come up with, they need to propose for you to act on it unless you want to keep it a permitted use.
Yeah.
And I only said, yes, you could do IUP or CUP because that was proposed by some of you. That was echoed in your conversation.
Yeah.
Does that make
sense?
Help you?
Does that help you or not?
I mean, to some extent, if you want to see this as a IUP or a CUP, then I think that's adding a line in your R1 section. The performance standards, I'm quite honestly still not quite clear what the planning commission is looking for, because you already do have standards imposed on these recreational vehicles. That's why we use that term. It's because it's already defined in your ordinance. There's already requirements in order to place that on any property, and so we were simply trying to dovetail that. What I'm not clear is if you're thinking that there are things above and beyond what you would require if somebody wanted to put an RV on a regular riparian lot.
Well, what I'd throw out there, if this comes up as an IUP, right? So let's just fast forward. Let's say that this is allowed as an interim use permit, and now this comes up and we're voting on it like we do most things, either for recommendation or approval as a planning commission. The things that are going to be asked and considered are, how are we going to handle the wastewater? There's, on an island, septic probably isn't going to be feasible. You can't have a holding tank. What do you do? What is the way to handle wastewater? Safety. Okay, how do emergency vehicles get there? How do you notify authorities? Is there a plan? And some of that stuff just needs vetting to create a best practice, which would then go into performance standards that would make the IUP process roll. Because with the IUP, there's going to be conditions that would be those performance standards that would apply. And absent of those, as an applicant would come forward, it's going to probably getting it shot down. And so it's trying to head some of that stuff off and develop the standards then that other islands and anybody can use, and it's going to be addressing those concerns.
I think I've got as good as I'm going to get.
Yeah, no,
Well, it'd be like any building, like a she shed or he shed or whatever, and a garden tool shed or whatever. I mean, there probably need to be some restrictions on that and some clarification on that.
So, Mr. Chair, Adam, I think and you're right, we have performance standards for RVs, but we don't have performance standards for RVs on islands. So what I hear is that there would be maybe 4 to 6 things, or 10, I don't know, that you could propose that might alleviate some of their concerns, or at least allow them to promote this as a concept to the board. That's what I'm hearing.
Yeah, I know I'm doing a poor job articulating it too.
I mean, we're just kind of in the awkward position of writing the county's ordinance for the county, and I get we've asked for that, so we kind of take the burden as it comes. But
yeah,
I guess I was looking at like Beltrami County. Apparently, they don't really distinguish islands from anything else. So I was like, that's kind of where I was like, well, okay, not every island's the same. Why would we not look at each island location like any other request? I guess that's where I'm coming from on it. But the ordinance, just to say that, dwellings are prohibited except for, and that makes me a little uncomfortable, because if we can't control for other conditions or whatever, then we are creating a hardship for the county.
Yeah, I do think the IUP process is a good idea. I really do. There's a good thought that came up as a way to do it, and it's just a matter of what are those additional things that make sure an IUP gets processed, addressing those concerns that don't apply if you can just drive there.
Yep, and so just to kind of conclude, we do want to continue to refine the ordinance to the extent we got to extend the 60 days. We'll happily do that. I'll work with staff to come up with some additional revisions to the language we've proposed.
Yeah, and even things like docks, X amount of docks, or it being sometimes I'm just thinking long term where this stuff goes, and those are going to be concerns people are going to have. Well, now is there going to be a giant, system, even if it's just X amount of docks allowed per, thing. It's just trying to be proactive on it so that things go well when they get in this environment. Okay, so we're going to continue that until the next one. Thanks for working through the process.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, Angie, Heidi, do you need to do that date specific, or do you need a motion for that?
Mr. Chair, Commissioner Bertram, so right now we have enough time under the 60 days to extend it ourselves. I think we'll work with the applicants, and if we need more, if they need more time than we need for the 60 days, they'll need to extend it, or we'll just have to bring it forward with what we have.
Yeah, and we aren't voting regardless on this anyway, so I don't think we have to vote to continue it.
I'd say we'll put it on the agenda when it's ready,
Yeah.
unless we are required to meet the 60 if we don't have a waiver.
Yeah.
And then just one other suggestion for staff is when you're laying this all out, identify the variance for the setbacks, what the reality of that is, the township not allowing RVs, and then the map revision from FEMA DNR, that process. There's a process for that. So just lay that all out, that you guys have all that as you're taking everything into consideration.
All right. So, thank you again. That takes us to agenda item number 5, and that's to review and make recommendation to Stearns County Land Use and Zoning Ordinance 439 changes. So with that, is this the same one we're just talking about, or is this a separate one? Because
Mr. Chair, these are proposed changes that Environmental
thank you.
Services is bringing forth to you. These aren't from a specific applicant.
okay.
So in front of you, I have a couple of different ways to look at this. I created a spreadsheet with the ordinance section, the proposed provision, and then why, or the rationale for change. If you would prefer to see what it looks like basically embedded into the ordinance, you can go on to the subsequent pages in your packet. Okay, so this conversation could be maybe a little bit shorter depending on how you want to handle one of the pieces, but I'm going to start at the top. Section 3 is our ordinance definition section, so we're looking at proposing some slight amendments. The amendments to lot non-riparian and lot riparian, they relate directly to section 6, as we are proposing a change to the size of accessory structures on non-riparian parcels. As I said when you had the plat with you last month, that we were going to be bringing some ordinance changes to you that are completely separate from that plat, but very much related. The changes had started probably 6 to 9 months ago. That plat started before that. It wasn't a direct correlation, but the timing was interesting. So keep in mind the non-riparian versus riparian, and then we're going to come back to what that actually would look like. Section 4.8, 4.9, 4.10, going all the way down to where it says 4.22. That's our administration section, and that what we're looking to do is basically put a expiration on incomplete applications. And the reason for that is to prevent indefinite status of permits pending in our office. Okay, so right now they could go on for a long time because the application doesn't expire. So we're proposing to expire out incomplete applications. The next one.
Mr. Chairman, Angie,
Sorry.
can I just ask on 4.9, 4.10, you've got 1 year, it expires after 1 year, and then in 4.1, 4.11.5, and 4.22, it's 6 months. I know they're different things, but is it important to have consistency or not really?
Mr. Chair, Commissioner Bertram, we felt that CUPs, IUPs, and variances generally take longer to put all your stuff together. So we wanted to give people a whole year, whereas construction site permits and shoreline alteration permits are a little bit easier. So we would prefer that to be the 6 month, to be shorter, and leave the IUP, CUP variances to be a longer.
That makes sense.
So.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
So Andrew, just a question on those. Does it state elsewhere in the ordinance when the time starts?
It would start
1 year from when?
It would be from the date it was received by our department.
Okay.
So if it's submitted by online, it would be the date it was submitted in the portal. If it's in the office, we would date stamp it.
Okay.
So,
And they're putting money down, they're paying at the time that they're putting those applications in?
correct,
Okay. So that, in essence, what's at risk there is their fee?
correct.
Okay.
Yep. The next line item would be 5.1.2A9, and I might lose you on this one, but we had made some changes a couple of years ago. Many of you were on our comprehensive plan committee and then subsequent ordinance committee during COVID when we met online. We made a lot of changes to temporary, secondary homes on farms. I think you kind of probably remember that. They used to be
yes.
IUPs and CUPs. Now they're mostly not. They're permitted or provisional. And so in order to keep that consistency, we need to make a bit of a change, because what we had over the last 20 years before that amendment was made is we had some that were IUPs and CUPs. Now they're going to be expiring.
Oh.
So they were kind of held in la land. So we didn't know how to deal with them. So we're proposing to make it clear that they become consistent with the new ones as a provisional use.
Anything after that date that we said it's permittable automatically becomes permittable.
Correct.
Regardless.
Yeah, it's really a consistency measure. Nothing's really changing.
Does that make sense to, well, you were part of that. Dave, being new, we used to have an IUP and CUP process if someone was going to put a secondary residence on a farm site. There was limitations on it initially because what was the intent of not having that? It was to prevent that. Okay, thank you. Yep. And what we started to recognize is that prohibited a lot of family farm succession from happening, because you had the parents that were farming, and in order to pass it on to the next generation, the kids need to live there and build houses, and that created problems. So rather than requiring it every time, we made it, hey, this is just a permittable thing to do. And so now, because we have all these old IUPs that were approved, once they expire, we're just saying, you don't have to renew your IUP. You're now permittable. Just like anyone that would be applying for the first time would be.
Okay.
Okay, cool. Sorry. I'm just trying to go back from when I was in those shoes and trying to
Thank you.
Thank you. Get educated.
Johnny on the spot. All right, the next one is, again, under ordinance section 6. That's just a renumbering, so you don't have to worry about anything there because nothing's in red. The next section would be 6.0, and this is where not to lead you, but I would suspect you may want to continue discussion on this until a future time. This does relate to non-riparian accessory structures. Did I skip ahead? Oh yeah. The first one is accessory structures not needing a construction site permit anywhere in the county if they're 150 square feet or less. Right now, there's a little hole in our ordinance where if you're commercial, industrial, and other zoning districts, you still need to get a permit. That was never the intent. Former Commissioner Mergen had made this change to our ordinance probably 5 or 7 years ago, where residential accessory structures 150 square feet or less don't need a permit.
Yep.
You probably remember that. We're broadening that open a little bit more to all zoning districts.
Versus just residential.
Yes. Okay. So now moving on to this little chart that you can see here, this little chart down here. Ever since the county has had, ever since we adopted the countywide zoning ordinance in 2000, we have based the shed size in shoreland based on your lot size. Okay? So if you have an acre and you're in shoreland, you get 1,500 square feet. Okay, we've always went by that chart. In shoreland, shoreland's 1,000 feet from a lake, 300 feet from a river or stream. What we want to have discussion on, and we don't need finality on this tonight, but starting to get you thinking about it, would be non-riparian parcels in shoreland we're proposing could have more shed size. So they could go up to having 5% of the lot area instead of going by the chart. And the reason that we're suggesting the change is we have been seeing lots of requests come forward at the Board of Adjustment. So, you know, they own a lot across the road and they have they're a trucker, or they have a lot of stuff and they want to have a larger shed. And we talked a lot about this as a team, as a department. You know, why did we have it to begin with? And I think a lot of the intent was so you are on the lake, you're looking up at the shoreline, and you're not seeing, you know, a 16-foot sidewall shed, right? Well, if you're non-riparian, is it less of a concern? Typically, you know, your impervious is less of a concern when you're non-riparian, et cetera. We're only bringing these things to you because if I have 5 to 10 people a year suggest a change, I'm going to suggest it to you to talk about, and we have that. We've kind of met that threshold. Again, we're not here to talk about Hidden Cove Sheds plat, but I know that whole discussion does relate to this because it's non-riparian shed in shoreland. So I think along with that, you can talk about it, you can ask questions. I think at some point there might be some discussion on, at least what I heard as a result of that particular plat was, do we want to allow for residential accessory structures on parcels without building entitlements? Do we want to allow residential accessory structures on, where does it end, right? So if we want to have those conversations, we're definitely not having those tonight. Yeah. We would be looking for a subgroup, a couple people from the Planning Commission, a couple people from the board. Let's knock this issue out. It's honestly the only thing I've been like thinking about since that hearing. As a zoning administrator, you're like, okay, well, what do I hear? What do I see? How can we frame this? So I've been working on it already. So with that, you can just say, yep, let's just pause on that and let's wait. I do have other changes, though, that we really do need to get through for public hearing, so we would move on those to the board, but we would set aside the accessory structure changes for the moment. So I'll pause and let you talk.
All right. So you're saying you would be okay with holding off on 6.2.1A until we address had a group look at the other aspect of, God darn it, it's getting late, how you framed it.
Yes.
Yeah, accessory structures on non-residential lot.
Correct.
Thank you.
I would concur with the idea of pulling those two out.
Yep, I'm with you.
Okay.
Anyone else see a different want to vote? Okay.
Yep.
Good. Hey, back up to ordinance section 3 towards the top.
Yes.
All right. Sorry, going back to this. All right. Lot non-riparian. What are we getting at between those two again?
So those two relate to what I think you all decided just to hold off on. So we would not be acting on those definitions at this time because.
Oh, it's a definition. Thank you. Yep. Okay, so 3 and 6.218. All right.
Yep.
Other than that, then I'm fine with everything else. I was good with all the expiration dates. I was good with some of these others. Does anyone have an issue with any of these? So, hearing none, I would say we're good acting on, or are we making a recommendation? Yeah,
right.
We would recommend acting on everything except for the ordinance section 3, definitions of riparian and non-riparian lots, and the riparian parcels in the Shoreland Overlay District.
And that also includes the second page that I have up, correct? Or are you just going on page 1?
Oh, shoot.
I was good with the second page.
Just waiting to drop that.
Is there anything particularly controversial? Is there anything particularly controversial on the second page? I didn't see anything that.
I mean, the one thing that I would say you might want to think about is we are proposing to get rid of color, design, and materials of accessory structures and allowing galvanized metal siding and galvanized metal roofs. in residential district. It's trending right now.
I was just gonna say, that's really cool right now.
That's the key word, trending.
Well,
You know, and in 5 years from now, it's gonna be an eyesore.
It'll be something else.
so you can think about that.
People might say that about shingles. They're an eyesore.
And I think as Commissioner Bertram alluded to earlier, there's homeowners associations, they can deal more with aesthetics. It's for a county of our size with the rural landscape that we have, this is a tough provision.
Agreed.
So we're proposing to remove that. I would say, I don't know if it's controversial. The only other one to note would be we are proposing roof-mounted solar not to require a construction site permit. They would have to follow all the standards, but just as you're re-roofing your roof, we don't have building code, so some of this turns into that. Still follow the standards, don't need a permit. Trying to think what else. A lot of the other things were really just references. We are proposing on section 7.1.4 to have a minimum driveway width. You wouldn't think you'd have to tell someone how wide their driveway is until they build a new house and propose no driveway, and they're at their lot coverage. And then they want to put a driveway in, and now they're over their lot coverage. So we have to help people help themselves in the future. So
Yeah, right on.
we're doing that.
Why 9 feet versus 8? Isn't a standard road lane 8?
Yeah, I don't know why we came up with 9 over 8 or 7. Certainly open to suggestions on that.
I would go 8. If
8?
To serve the purpose you're getting at, I would just say 8.
I'd go 9. Emergency vehicle, you want them back an ambulance or something, or you got 8-foot driveway, are you?
Well, that could be a reason.
Problem.
I mean, I just think vehicles are getting wider.
Everything's getting bigger.
Full-size pickup trucks with the mirrors they have nowadays.
Yeah.
Oh, wait.
8.73.
I'm not going to fall on the sword. Mike, you make a good point. But 9 I'm fine with. I'm the only one that cared. So, all right, cool. 9 it is. Does anyone else have any other deals or issues? I personally don't. We're good recommending. So, good recommending all of these changes with the exception of the non-riparian and the shed stuff.
Yes, and I don't want to speak out of turn because the commissioners haven't directed us yet to do this. I suspect they will, but in the event that they asked for a small subgroup or committee of a couple of people on the planning commission, a couple of people on the county board, I'll be sending an email. If you're interested, let me know. I'm not thinking it's a 6-month process. I'm hoping just maybe a month or so. We meet a couple times, we knock out some of these issues, and then we'll come back with another ordinance change.
It's a good idea.
Okay.
Jeff, anything else you need based on discussion here? You'd bring back for feedback?
I just want Mike to know that I didn't take offense when he said everything's getting bigger. He looked this way, and I didn't take offense to that at all. But thank you for the work that you do. I don't know, Angie, is it appropriate for me to share some of the facts, or should I do that privately, or of that situation?
The one earlier
Correct.
tonight, I think we should just wait on that since it's continued.
Because there's a couple of things, factual things that, and maybe I know too much, but I'll share that with you at some point. Again, we're going to, just what I would encourage you to do is do the 14 island approach, not the one.
Yeah. Good. Thanks, Jeff.
And I might share some of that privately. I can do that.
All right. Then we have minutes. So we're good on that. We're going to agenda item number 6, and that's minutes from last meeting. Rich approves. Dave seconds. All those in favor of approval, say aye. All those opposed? It's done. Any other discussion? We've gone too late tonight. So at some point, I liked the training last week, and I think we could do something slightly more formal on the public side of it. So just making a list, and I think we could hammer that out when we have a short agenda night some evening. Here's the things with, just have printed sheets sitting there with our kind of rules of engagement for public testimony. To articulate, I haven't done a very good job of managing those things. as we've had some of them come up, and I think there's, I can do a better job approaching it, but also having something that's just printed in the standard could help us. And then the next person that sits in this chair.
Big clock. Big clock.
Well, baseball, Major League Baseball's gone to that. It's
Says
a pitch
2
count.
minutes.
And, yep.
You start talking, 2 minutes are done.
The one thing I learned, Mr. Chairman, was I did not know that you could enact a moratorium after an application was made. I always was led to believe that if an application was made, you couldn't stop that.
Yeah.
I never knew that.
All right. So with that, motion to adjourn the meeting. Thanks, Mike. Thanks for the second, Sean. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed.
Go see who the Vikings draft. Yeah, right.